Work after having a rough morning and you realize that suddenly you're stuck in traffic. Of course, it had to happen to you, and of course, it had to happen on the day you ran out of coffee, right? Now, you finally get to the office, you're aggravated, and you realize that you can't even find where you saved last night's work. So now the day is officially ruined, or at least that's what most of us like to think. What if I told you that what's really ruined is just your attitude? See, many of us go through life not realizing that we can change our perspective on life's events. I was in the same scenario not too long ago, and I realized in the moment that the only problem was actually myself. Let's look at positive thinking, why it's life changing, and why we should do it more often in situations like this one. Now, for starters, positive thinking plays a huge role in physical and mental health. Johns Hopkins medicine research actually uncovered that people who had a family history of heart disease and had a more positive outlook on life were actually 1/3 less likely to have a heart attack than those with a negative outlook on life. Now, that same research also showed that people who are at a high risk factor for heart disease were also still 13% less likely to have a heart attack with a positive outlook on life than those with a negative outlook on life. Another study at the University of Kansas uncovered that smiling, genuinely or not, actually reduces heart rate and blood pressure, especially in stressful situations. That same study also uncovered that smiling can lead to less stress, which can actually lead to a longer life. So it's a win-win situation for everyone. Now, as I move on forward into character development, positive thinking plays a crucial foundational role in character and professional development. When I think of negative thoughts, I almost like to think of negative thoughts as a downward spiral that do little or nothing to help you. As we go through life and experiencing things, when we think more negatively about these experiences, we tend to usually have a more unpleasant experience. It almost goes hand in hand with the saying, you are what you manifest, but not completely and not for every situation and event in life. And I'll get to that in just a minute. But first, I'd like to use this speech as an example. Now, if I started creating the speech and from the get-go, I had a negative outlook towards it, and I said things like, I can't even figure out the topic, or honestly, I don't even need this class. I'm giving myself a negative outlook towards the class, which most likely will result in a lower effort, which is obviously going to result in a lower grade. Now, apart from that being irresponsible of me, who's to say I won't do the same at work, or in my English class, or when I'm trying to improve on myself for the better in the future? Now, we're only hindering ourselves generally and professionally when it comes to character development in the future by creating these habits. Now, remember that spiral. That downward spiral is still going, right? So negative me thought, the speech was a waste of time, and I'm not going to do it. Now, what will my peers think of me? Let's think professional development for a little bit. Say this speech was actually going to get sent out to a university of my choosing that I applied 3 months to prior. What does that say of myself? What does that say of my character? What will my peers think, or my colleagues, or my counselors, or the administrators? I'm creating a negatively perceived character, one which lacks determination and lacks perseverance. And professionally, this is somebody that you would want to avoid, right? If you were in the hiring process, you definitely wouldn't want to hire this person from the start, correct? So it almost goes with the saying, birds of a feather flock together. People want to tend to affiliate themselves more with positive thinkers than those who are negative thinkers and are easily defeated or set back. So instead of giving up, ask yourself, have I even begun to double down on what it is that I want to do or want to achieve? Or am I leaving my life to a feeling that nothing can be done to shape the future or outcome? Keep that last question in mind as I go over my last topic, which is the limits of positive thinking and why balance is so important. Now, Anna Keating is an author and a teacher in the state of Indiana. And she explains that the limits of positive thinking come with the negative aspects of life and what life tends to throw at us. We go through many negative things, illness, traumatic events, death of a loved one, and these are stressful and negative situations that we really can't control. Anna Keating also said a quote that I'd like to share with you that I thought was almost important to myself. She said, in a positive thinking world, people don't go to funerals. You avoid suffering people, and you leave the newspapers unread on your bedside at night. Because if you don't think of it, it doesn't exist. I usually like to tie that quote in with what I mentioned previously or earlier on, which was, you are what you manifest. See, that quote in itself, you are what you manifest, is simply not true for all aspects and events in life. If somebody was hit by a drunk driver out on the road, is that truly what they manifested? It's just unfathomable and unreasonable to think that quote applies to everything. Now, when it comes to this grade and this speech, of course, I would love to manifest an A, obviously, which leads me to my last point, in being that positive thinking can only get us so much. If I go in for an exam, and before I walk in, I hype myself up, and I get ready, and I'm giving myself positive thoughts that I'm going to pass this exam, but I didn't study the night of the exam, and I haven't studied all week. What's going to be the outcome of that? Those positive thoughts I pretty much can just throw out the window, because I know for a fact that I'm going to get a grade of an F. I'm going to fail that exam, because we must be willing to do the work. We can't just positively think manifestation into everything in our lives, into existence. We must be willing to put in the work. So what I really would like to leave you all off here with is that positive thinking is great for day-to-day life and managing our day-to-day life and reducing unnecessary stress that we tend to add on ourselves unwillingly and unknowingly. Secondly, positive thinking is crucial for character and professional development, as it almost tends to show who we are or how we wish to be seen by others, or even by our loved ones. And lastly, positive thinking has its limits. Negative impacts, negative events take place in life, and they're out of our control. We must be able to accept change in our life. But regardless, and nevertheless, even in a stressful situation, take a minute to just breathe and smile. It might make all the difference. Thank you.